Hello everybody, Disciple here with Overwatch Curios and Overwatch Moments. Before we get into today's video, I've got a quick message from a sponsor and I wanted to share with you guys an awesome way to get free gift cards for things like PlayStation, Xbox, or Steam. The app is called AppBounty on Android and Blue on iOS, and you can follow the link in the description to check it out. Sign up with the code OWC for Overwatch Curios for some free points, and then get started earning towards your own free gifts. You can do really simple things like downloading apps and completing short tasks that are absolutely free to you, and you'll immediately earn points that you can use not just for gaming, but on sites like iTunes, Netflix, and Amazon as well. I do about 90% of my shopping on Amazon. I buy way too many games on Steam that I haven't played yet, and I like to Netflix and chill with the best of them, and I'm sure you guys wouldn't mind having a little bit of extra spending money. If nothing else, you can get more loot boxes to snag those awesome event skins that aren't going to be around for too long. I've actually used the app myself long before they contacted me, and I can promise you guys it's legit, so check out the link below and give it a try. Anyways, let's get started. From early on in development, all the way up until release and beyond, Overwatch's heroes have gone through some serious changes involving their abilities. They've been altered, evolved, iterated on, and some have even been removed altogether, and that's what we're going to focus on today. Whether it's because they didn't fit within the roster properly, or they didn't make sense from a tech standpoint, or they were just plain overpowered or imbalanced, here's the list of abilities that were in Overwatch at one point, and then removed from the game later on. Let's dig right in. So Junkrat is already a pretty versatile hero and can be extremely deadly in the right hands. Learn the arcs and travel times of his grenades and you're off to decimating mid-health heroes left and right and putting tanks on the back foot as well. In particular, his Riptire ultimate can be scary on its own and absolutely ridiculous when coupled with an ult that holds enemies in place like Zarya's Graviton Surge or Mei's Blizzard. Team kills for absolute days. But way before that, during the creation process for Junkrat, he had a very different ult that presumably had a very similar outcome. He actually has a shoulder-mounted homing missile that was player-controlled. The trigger or detonator he uses now was used to control the missile, allowing the player to target and destroy grouped-up enemies from the air. It's not really a far reach from the Riptire in terms of how it's controlled and how it actually executes. The player would leave Junkrat's model and take direct control of the rocket just like with his current ult. However, adding in the factor of verticality and flight makes it completely different and probably way OP for the roster as a whole. Similar tactics would probably happen with snared and stunned enemies being the top priority, but as an enemy you'd have very little warning and mitigating the missile would be a chore in and of itself. It's already hard enough sometimes to locate, target, and take down the Riptire before it actually destroys you. Now imagine having to do it with a flying object where it doesn't need walls to jump up into the air. You'd find an entire enemy team simultaneously looking skyward, behind them, left, right, and everywhere while they try and find that incoming missile, all the while ignoring the enemy team which could be firing at them at the same time. It's hilarious to think about, but probably not a good thing for balance in the grand scheme of things. Reaper's always been a barrel of fun, plowing through enemy teams, removing tanks from the equation, and picking up little soul drops to replenish his health. But before the soul drop idea was fully fleshed out as a passive, the dev team at one point had Reaper picking up their actual souls, which prevented Mercy from resurrecting them. From Mercy's perspective, when a player dies, a small yellow glowing animation floats slightly above the player's body. This shows the Mercy at a glance who is able to be resurrected, and also acts as a point to which Mercy can fly to. If Reaper actually stole these souls instead of the fallen heroes spawning a separate healing item, then it would prevent Mercy from resurrecting or jumping to the hero, which is actually a pretty huge deal in a teamfight scenario, and it would make him an amazing counterpick to her. Many a game has been won on the back of a clutch resurrect ultimate right before the point turned, or after the entire team used their ults already. If this stayed in, it could make Reaper much more viable, especially as a direct counter to Mercy, and make her ult a lot less significant than it already is. She's not in a good place right now, and the ult's kind of the only thing keeping her around. It might have even made Reaper a must pick in most of the meta setups we've seen since launch, since Mercy was such a valuable hero in the meta back then, and she was pretty much a must have until she went through quite a few nerfs, and Ana got buffed as well. Reaper also had a sweet talent that got removed, like all of the other talents that we had in Overwatch, that augmented his Wraith form to give him healing powers. Yeah, I'm talking about talents. Back before beta, the Overwatch team worked hard on a leveling and talent system that acted much like one from World of Warcraft or Diablo, that allowed players to fully customize their heroes with individual talents as they leveled up. This, of course, was a little difficult to balance and pretty hard to see in-game when judging your enemy's power levels, and it was removed in favor of other progression systems. But at one time, Reaper players could actually talent into Wraith form and earn a self-heal to full that would be used every time the ability was popped. It's assumed that this came well before the soul drops we mentioned a bit ago, and Reaper was always supposed to have some sort of healing mechanic, which is pretty interesting to know. However, this is a much more consistent heal than the drops are, simply because it's timed, just like a Mei Ice Block. You can actually count on and calculate when you're about to get a full-on heal, which makes it incredibly strong, and allows you to risk a lot when you want to go in for a flank or an ultimate. There's pretty much no risk to the reward at all, as there is with killing enemies and getting small heals as a bonus to actually finishing them off. A typical play on this version of Reaper would be to go in, guns blazing, with maybe some kind of mitigation like a Zarya shield, or behind a charging Reinhardt, and then just have at it until you're about to die. Sort of like Mei, like we said, where Mei goes in, freezes and damages, and then ice blocks to regen to full health. The risk there is that you can't move while on ice block. With Reaper's talent, you wouldn't only heal to full, but you'd be invulnerable and get away at a pretty good pace, since Wraith form does increase your movement speed as well. I really can't imagine a more overpowered killing machine other than maybe the old Genji. Just that one change would absolutely make him insane and a must pick for every fight. So count your blessings that a full talent system was scrapped early on, or the current experience could be something much more terrifying and frustrating, especially for the enemies of Reaper players. However, it's a little hard to judge, since we haven't seen what the other heroes' talents might have been, and they might have had some pretty cool tools in their own arsenals as well. Coming in first with the generic FPS Soldier Archetype Award, Soldier 76 has a pretty straightforward kit. You run in, shoot things, do a ton of damage, and then back off to heal when things get a little dicey. He's a mainstay hero who's pretty much valid in any comp at this point. His biotic field is actually a really strong heal that can not only be used for yourself, but for your teammates as well, and can mitigate a lot of damage if your healers are occupied or dead. During a Reddit Q&A for Soldier 76, Jeff Goodman, the lead hero designer on the Overwatch team, mentioned that before the biotic field came into play, 76 had a self-healing syringe that he'd jab into himself for a quick heal boost. This may not seem like a huge change, and even the amount of healing might have been the same, but the number of times a clutch 76 heal has saved a match or turned the tide after an ult push is probably pretty big. Some team comps actually pick 76 to replace a healer in favor of a heavy damage dealer in a more aggressive approach. While rare, it's still completely doable and relies solely on the 76 player knowing exactly where and when to drop the biotic field to heal up his team. While the triple tank meta is pretty much a thing of the past by now, tank heavy comps still use the heal as an aggressive starting point to a counter push. The enemy team uses their ults and abilities to push into an objective, while 76 drops the heals down, supports the actual healers and allows them to do their jobs, and then push with pretty much instantaneous full health. It would certainly be a very different landscape for casual and competitive 76 players if the heal were self-only. Luckily, the ability was removed in favor of a team-friendly heal that we can all appreciate. Another thing it's interesting to think about is that this self-heal might have originated from StarCraft, where you did have the Marines using their stim packs, and we see that with Raynor in Heroes of the Storm as well. So something kind of similar may have carried over to Soldier 76, but was of course dropped in favor of his current ability. So Sombra's in a pretty weird place right now. She's not exactly terrible, but she's not really meta either. Her recent buff actually saw her win rate decrease because people started playing her and they had no idea how. However, something really weird is what Sombra used to be during her design phase. Sombra actually began as a support hero. The main focus of the hero was basically hack all the things, and she had a laundry list of items and heroes that she could hack for various different effects. Her hack itself had no cooldown and couldn't be interrupted, kind of like Symmetra's primary fire where she just locks right on with a beam. You could just latch onto the target and hack away, running through an enemy team, locking them all down. You could also hack various structures and health packs throughout the map like you can now, only with zero cooldown, making the number of things hacked at one time incredibly large. The main issue to arise from this was, of course, the concept of keeping track of a ton of hacked things all the time. There was no way a player could keep up with everything as well as follow the team and deal with enemies and objectives. This went from awesome to not fun at all pretty fast, and testers ended up not knowing what they were supposed to do and maintaining a list in their heads, which is way too complicated for the scope of an Overwatch match when everything happens incredibly quickly. While this version of Sombra could be really useful in the right hands, and it'd be really cool to know exactly what some of the specific hacks were, you'd have to have a very specialized player to really make her effective if replacing another support hero or DPS. This would reduce the pool of competent Sombra players to just a handful of the player base, limiting the accessibility of the hero, which is pretty much the opposite of what the team wanted. After a ton of testing, the team decided to scrap the way hacking was done and trim it down to something more focused and useful while opening the hero up to everyone and making her helpful to the team as a whole as an assault hero. Of course, it's still not too many people who know how to play her effectively, however her playstyle is definitely a lot more straightforward than it once would have been. So, these are just some of the abilities that were scrapped during Overwatch's development. Just the ones we know of, as a matter of fact. There's probably a ton of weird, interesting, and OP abilities that were scrapped and remade or replaced during that long development cycle before we started to see the game emerge back in 2014. If you guys like this video, don't be afraid to leave a like and subscribe for more videos in the future. Also, let us know if there are any abilities you'd love to see in Overwatch in the future, either on an existing character or on a new hero entirely. Anyway, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.